All right. Why don't we just get started as people start to trickle in? Thank you all for joining us for our panel, Clean Water for Salmon, Integrating Salmon Safe into Park Systems and Stormwater Parks. Today we have a really great panel. We're going to start with Laura Lehman, who is the Senior Environmental Planner for Portland Parks. Kurt Culbertson, who is a principal at Design Workshop. Rachael Meyer, the Director of Sustainability at Weber Thompson, and Heidi Candithel, the Special Projects Manager at King County Parks. So I will let you guys take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Ella. So Salmon-Safe is different than most certification programs you may know about. And by the way, I'm Anna Huddle. I'm Salmon-Safe Certification Director. I'm delighted to be with you here today. Salmon-Safe was founded by Pacific Rivers, a river and native fish protection organization around the time of the Endangered Species Act listing of sockeye salmon, followed by Chinook and coho, with the goal of developing a market-based incentive to reward landowners for protecting water quality and habitat. Our mission is to transform land management practices so that Pacific salmon can thrive in West Coast watersheds. We're now an independent Portland-based nonprofit working across Cascadia through a network of place-based partners that include other certification organizations like LIVE, Global Gap, VNEA, Oregon Tilth, and Demeter Biodynamic, as well as environmental nonprofits like the Fraser Basin Council and Stewardship Partners, our longtime Puget Sound implementation partner. And we're so grateful to be co-hosting this webinar today with our BC partner, Fraser Basin Council, and have Aaron Wentworth with us. So work with Parks and Salmon-Safe started with an inquiry from Portland's Planning and Sustainability Commission after the salmon listings in Willamette River, and was championed by then Parks Director Charles Jordan. This inspired Salmon-Safe to take the principles from what was then our only standards, the farm standards, and adapt them to the unique characteristics and challenges of parks and park management. Portland Parks was first certified in 2004 and is now in its 20th year of Salmon-Safe, which is just amazing and staggering. Portland Parks was certified as a whole park system across its 244 park sites and 10,000 acres. And this is a photo of our science team in the field with Portland Parks and Rec during their May 2018 reassessment. It's important to note that as park systems evolve and change over time, so too does the focus of Salmon-Safe's work with those parks or park systems. In our most recent reassessment of Portland Parks this past year, we were in Forest Park, pictured here, among other places, talking about large-scale invasives management. And we're so lucky to have Laura Lehman from Portland Parks and Rec with us today. And you can see her on the leftmost side of this photo here. Just looking at the different scale of parks and park systems, a smaller municipal park system, Eugene Parks and Open Spaces, achieved Salmon-Safe certification for its roughly 4,600 acre system in 2017. The certification encompasses 130 parks, natural areas, and special use facilities, including a municipal golf course and 9 pesticide-free parks. And this is just an example of a bus side ad that we did with Eugene Parks as part of the marketing and communications effort to share and celebrate their certification achievement, which we seek to do with all of our certified sites. Our Parks and Natural Areas program isn't limited to whole park systems, though. The scale can be as small as one park or one site. So for example, the city of Tumwater pursued certification for its 200-acre Tumwater Valley Golf Course, which is managed by Tumwater Parks and Rec. And at a totally different scale is the approximately 32,000-acre King County Park system. King County Parks decided to pursue Salmon-Safe in 2021 and in early 2022 formalized certification. And you'll hear a little bit later from Heidi Candithel about the magnitude of the county's park system and the benefits that the county sees in Salmon-Safe. Just shifting gears a little bit and talking about the actual steps to a park certification. We start out with a review of environmental guidelines and policies, really seeking to understand everything there is to know about sort of the management philosophy and on-the-ground practices of parks maintenance and management, design of new parks, and redevelopment. This then feeds into really the heart of the assessment, which is the heart of the process, which is the site assessment. And that's a combination of a sit-down conversation with key park staff to understand how these guidelines and policies we've reviewed play out in the field. And then an actual tour of a representative sampling of park sites. We don't necessarily seek to visit every square inch of a park system because that would just be infeasible. But we look to visit sites that represent all of the different typologies of landscapes within a park system, with a special focus on park sites that are environmentally sensitive or near a waterway or things like that. So that combination of kind of in-depth learning and understanding about the park or park system, together with the field time, are combined. Our findings are combined into an assessment report that's then issued to the park system, and that would include any of the recommendations for the 5-year certification cycle. And that's followed by the final step, which is the formalization of certification through sign off on a certification letter. And we then, stay in touch and check in at least annually to make sure progress is happening on any of those conditions. And you can see here just an example of the field portion of a site assessment with Eugene Parks. And this was back in 2016, I believe. So there are 7 standards categories for our Parks and Natural Areas standards. And I'll talk about each one of these at a high level in just a moment, but just to kind of run through what they are. There's in-stream habitat protection and restoration, followed by riparian and wetland protection and restoration, water use and irrigation management, surface water runoff management, or effectively stormwater management, erosion and sediment control, and then pesticide reduction and water quality protection and landscaping, followed by enhancement of urban ecological function. The first category, in-stream habitat protection and restoration, looks at assessing the condition of the actual channel or water body that's on or adjacent to a site, including the stream bed and bank, water quality, and identifying opportunities for restoring or improving habitat. So physical as well as biological conditions contributing to habitat quality are considered for these standards. Riparian, wetland, and locally significant vegetation protection and restoration focuses on the measures taken to protect areas closest to those surface bodies that we were just looking at in that first category. So typically meaning riparian vegetation zones and wetlands. And this category also applies to areas with locally significant vegetation as identified during a site or park system assessment. Water use management is pretty straightforward. We're looking at exterior water use, primarily irrigation, as well as the source or sources of the water that's used, emphasizing both monitoring and conservation. So every park is required to, or park system is required to develop a water conservation plan that guides the long-term operations and maintenance of exterior water use systems. Surface water runoff management looks at how water landing on the site and ultimately leaving the site is handled. More specifically, Salmon-Safe looks at water quality and water quantity impacts and their sources, including everything from aging infrastructure or pet waste, which can be large in a park setting, construction runoff, metal particulates from certain building materials like uncoated zinc and copper that might be part of roof or cladding of structures within the parks, fertilizers and pesticides applied in landscape maintenance, vehicle pollutants running off from roads and parking lots and recreational use spaces, combined sewer overflows, private inflow, and then channelized drainage courses or waterways. Salmon-Safe looks to address all of these water quality and quantity impacts through the incorporation of things like green stormwater infrastructure, which you can see here in Eugene Parks, and rainwater harvesting, among other methods. Erosion prevention and sediment control is primarily centered around construction phase pollution prevention for park design, for new park design or redevelopment of a park, but also looks at permanent sources of potential erosion, such as from steep slopes or riparian areas that might be more common in a park or natural area type setting. And Salmon-Safe sets a high bar by asking for zero sediment runoff during construction. Getting towards the end here, and one of the really key areas of the park standards for this site typology is pesticide reduction and water quality protection in landscaping, which looks at operations and maintenance practices that seek to minimize chemical inputs on a site in favor of mechanical means of weed and pest control, and prohibits the use of chemistries on Salmon-Safe's high hazard list. All Salmon-Safe projects are required to either declare a site to be pesticide-free, or more likely in the case of a whole park system, develop an integrated pest management plan to guide vegetation maintenance. And then lastly, urban ecological function is a key area of focus in the park standards and hugely important for conserving and restoring vegetated cover and native species. The standards in this category look at the benefit that's provided by vegetated areas for birds, insects, and pollinators, and ideally helps to build back habitat value that's been degraded or lost in prior decades. And photo credit here to King County Parks on this restoration project. And to tell you more about how all of this works on the ground in real life, I'm honored to pass the mic over to our first panelist, Laura Lehman with Portland Parks and Recreation.
Thank you so much, Anna. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, folks, for being here today. My name is Laura Lehman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Environmental Planner at Portland Parks and Recreation. And I'm just going to do a quick overview of what our experience has been as a Salmon-Safe certified park system, and then talk a little bit about one particular site, Tanner Springs Park. So first, I'm going to start with a quick overview of our system. Portland has a population of about 640,000 people, and our system is, we're pretty rich in parks and recreation resources here. So we have about 8,000 acres of natural areas that we manage, about 154 developed parks, 1.2 million park trees, 158 miles of trails. That's just soft surface trails. That's not including regional trails. 137 playgrounds, 60 community gardens, and 14 art and community centers. So we have a wide variety of assets and are lucky to have so many things here. This is a little overview of our new mission and vision. In 2023, the City of Portland Parks adopted a new mission and vision. And the reason I wanted to share it here, the reason I thought it was relevant, is because of the emphasis in our mission and our vision on connecting people with nature, natural systems, and on the health of our environment. So our mission talks about providing equitable access to the environment and services that improve community health, as well as welcoming spaces. And then our vision talks about making sure that we're responsive to the community's needs and that we're nurturing health and connection for all, including, preserving healthy ecosystems and improving the health of ecosystems and our natural resources when we can. And also we have a real focus on people connecting, being able to connect with nature, either out in one of our large natural areas like Forest Park that's over 5,000 acres, or in the city, nature near where you live. We know how important that is for people's physical and emotional wellness, and that's really important to our system. One of the natural resources that we're so lucky to have here is salmon. We have native salmon and steelhead found in more than 125 miles of our approximately 300 miles of waterways. And this is an extremely valuable feature of our environment here in Portland, and consistent with our mission, it's a really important top priority for us to protect as a city. Consistent with how important that is to our system and our city, Portland Parks and Recreation, as Anna mentioned, was the first Parks and Recreation system to be certified as Salmon-Safe back in 2004. This has had a really important impact on our system and the way that we manage the resources that we steward every day. And there have been a number of benefits for our system that came out of this. And so I'm just going to step through each of those benefits. The picture that you see here, I'm just going to call out, is a picture of one of our nature patches. That's one of the programs that was partly inspired by the Salmon-Safe folks. Is we have a program called Ecologically Sustainable Landscapes. And that includes creating spaces like the one you see here, it's a native plant garden in a developed park. So it's a little pocket of nature in your neighborhood that you can access, even if you don't have the time to go all the way to a large natural area. So one of the things that's been really beneficial for Portland parks, and a really important benefit of Salmon-Safe certification, has been our ability to really focus on the power of using a system-wide approach to how we manage our resources. I think we all know as parks professionals that it's important to be managing your system at this scale, but sometimes in the day-to-day, as you're down in the weeds dealing with something that has to be dealt with right in that moment, it's easy to lose sight of the system-wide look. So it's really encouraged us, this program has encouraged us to take a look at stormwater and pesticide use, water use, and erosion and sediment control on that system-wide level, and also to help us think on a watershed scale and really remember to engage with our neighbors and with our community partners that can help us keep thinking at that larger watershed scale that we need to be working at. The Salmon-Safe program has also encouraged us in the development of a number of system-wide tools that we use for management now, including a system-wide natural areas restoration plan, a program of stream channel condition surveys, and an analysis of impervious surfaces system-wide. Salmon-Safe during the recertification process and the annual verification process serves as a really great reminder for us that we need to be looking system-wide. One of the other things that's been really beneficial for our park system through Salmon-Safe certification is that it's a really compelling thing that we can talk about with the community. People love salmon, and it's a really great talking point that we can gather around and to kind of rally people to come engage with their park system, come engage with community engagement events. We have a really strong environmental education program, and that's an important part of that draw, to know that we're really taking seriously care for salmon in our city. And it also helps to bring, and I'll touch on this again on the next slide, but it helps to bring folks to the table, knowing that we have a genuine investment in salmon and in protecting those resources. And it helps encourage partners to come and collaborate with us on that level. Somewhat connected, independent review of a public agency has been really beneficial to us because it provides some credibility to the statements that we make about the work that we're doing around protecting salmon and protecting water quality. And also, I think I've mentioned already, it really helps to keep us accountable. Just like anything else, for example, when we were first Salmon-Safe certified and we started working on the natural areas restoration plan, that annual verification and the 5-year certification really keeps you accountable to be using those tools and continuing to keep them up to date. The other thing is that partnership with Salmon-Safe does provide an opportunity for public education. It's something that folks are aware of and they know about, and they've maybe seen on some of their other products in the other systems that Salmon-Safe certifies, so they're familiar. And also something that we can use when applying for grant funding. It's, again, something that shows that we're really serious and have been reviewed independently in our practices around salmon and water quality. The last benefit for our system that I'm going to talk about is Salmon-Safe certification has really encouraged us to make science-based management decisions. This, again, similar to thinking at a system-wide scale, is something that I think parks practitioners, we try to do. It's something that we know is important, but that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle of the day-to-day. So the Salmon-Safe certification has really encouraged us to manage our properties and our natural resources using the data that we have, and to recognize when there's a need for us to collect more data and so that we can use it to make sure we're making those science-based decisions. And then the other thing that's really been beneficial is it helps us to take a consistent approach to management and decision making across the system. I know that in Portland parks, among our natural areas, the way we manage our sites is primarily divided by the east side and the west side. The Willamette River runs right down the middle of our city. And, you know, sometimes the teams that work on each side of the river aren't always in day-to-day conversation as they're, you know, going about the tasks that they need to do daily. But having a system-wide data set and a system-wide approach for how we make management decisions has really helped us improve how consistent we are in the way that we manage resources, regardless of what part of the system folks are working in. So now I'm going to shift gears and talk about Tanner Springs Park, which is a really special park that is in the Pearl District in Northwest Portland. It was designed through public process beginning in 2003. It's about an acre in size. And it's located in a place where that used to be Cooch Lake. Tanner Creek was named for a tannery, and it flowed to the east to the Willamette and into the Willamette River from the foothills. And it was piped and undergrounded while this area was developed. This is a former heavy industrial area. And so it was piped, the lake was gone, and we had the opportunity to develop 3 parks in a 3-block sequence, and this park is the middle one in the sequence. So on the screen here, north is to the left, so on the right is Jameson Square Park, in the middle is Tanner Springs Park, and then on the left is the Fields Park, and they were kind of envisioned as a sequence of parks. So Jameson Square is imagined, it has a fountain and is imagined as a place for like quiet contemplation. Tanner Springs Park is kind of envisioned as a place for passive recreation, engagement with nature, a place for you to take a walk or eat your lunch. And then the Fields Park is active recreation, sports fields, playgrounds. So this lovely sequence kind of takes you through the whole range of a parks and recreation experience. But at Tanner Springs Park, what happened here was we had the opportunity to work with Greenworks PC and Atelier Dreisaitl to design a park that would bring Tanner Creek back up to the surface. And so today, the creek has been brought to the surface at Tanner Springs Park. It still is piped to the east down to the river. And the area around it has all, since historically been filled and developed. So where the park sits now is about 20 feet above the elevation of where the former lake surface was. Some of the features of the park that are really neat, there are springs on the west side of the park that bubble up and they flow down towards the east, and the park is sloped to the east. And there's a stormwater pond, wetland pond on the east side of the park that you can see here in these photos. The park includes some walking paths that are made of reclaimed cobblestones. It includes some seating areas that are like terraced lawns. There is an art wall of reclaimed railroad rails. There are about 360 reclaimed rails that went into that wall that you can see in the background in the photo. And then the plantings are all native plants, including there's Oregon white oak, there is camas, there are a variety of native grasses, as well as some other native tree species. And so the last thing I wanted to show here is a kind of a diagram of how the stormwater is managed here at the site. So the stormwater from the neighboring streets and from the site itself all come and it flows west to east through the park down to the pond and is treated by all the vegetation in the system that we have in the park as it flows through. And then at the bottom of the pond, there's an overflow where the creek continues underground out to the Willamette. So the Tanner Creek is still piped from here to the Willamette River, but at this park, we get many benefits of stormwater treatment, and the water that flows from the park to the river meets water quality standards. And we also have a pretty unique opportunity here for people to connect with nature in the city in a sustainable way. And this is in one of the more urban areas of our city, so it's a really special opportunity. We see osprey, great blue herons, ducks, songbirds. We also see a lot of pollinators at this park. And we have a pretty robust environmental education system, and there's a lot of programming that happens at this park. So that is it for me. I will stop sharing my screen.
All right, I will share my screen. Okay. All right, I am Rachael Meyer. I am Principal of Landscape Architecture and Director of Sustainability with Weber Thompson. We are a 60-person architecture, interiors, and landscape firm in Seattle. And I'm going to speak to kind of our experience with designing stormwater parks into private development and integrating it into the urban areas in Seattle. The kind of first project that I really thought holistically about stormwater was working on the Bullitt Center, which was over 10 years ago now. This was while I was with another firm, the Berger Partnership. And this was, I love this image because, you know, to the left is a park, McGilver Place Park, which was also designed to the living building standard. And then the Bullitt Center to the right. During design and then after construction, these two sites were really compared in a lot of interesting ways, and especially with water, there are some really interesting kind of metrics that you know, balanced each other out. So, you know, from the building perspective, we really had to think about how to collect all the water we needed and, you know, think about how that water was going to be used. There's a 55,000 gallon cistern in the basement of the building, and then treating all of the gray water on site. And, you know, first we designed the building and then kind of shifted to the park. Well, the park, even though there isn't a rain garden at that site, preserving those trees represented you know, an in-kind amount of stormwater that we would be mitigating in a natural fashion. So the trees that are on site were expected to, you know, capture and transpire almost 44,000 gallons a year. And so just thinking about how both sites are collecting and using almost the same amount of water is really a powerful kind of image. And this was a project that was an early one that was considered for Salmon-Safe certification. And, you know, so kind of going on in time, in 2015, Jen McIntyre published her research on the water from 520, the 520 bridge, and the evidence that showed that that direct stormwater was killing salmon, you know, within hours, and that a column of soil was a filter that would reverse that fatal impact. The shifting of this story for stormwater, at least, really changed the narrative in our projects. And this evidence was so compelling to our private development clients that it really translated into looking at, you know, how salmon are migrating in our region and how we've created this environment where it's just a gauntlet for all of these salmon species. As we started to collaborate with Salmon-Safe and look at what the health effects were, you know, Salmon-Safe really brought the justification of, you know, science to this. You know, in these graphs, the blue line in the center, the light blue, represents the levels of contaminants that Jen McIntyre's group was seeing on 520 that was killing the salmon. And as we started to test the Aurora Bridge, we were seeing levels as high as 6 times the levels that Jen McIntyre was seeing. So these are some of the most toxic water samples that scientists have ever seen. We still don't know exactly why, but it's clear that it was an urgent problem. And then just kind of representing this as a truly man-made problem. Our salmon didn't historically swim along this pathway under this gauntlet. Lake Washington, used to drain out through the Duwamish and the port, but in early 1900s, the cut was established and the locks were built. And so now we have the situation where, salmon are swimming a different route to get out to the sound and are swimming under these bridges that are dumping such toxic water into the situation. So that is what led to a series of 3 phases of the Aurora Bridge swales. Data 1 was our first phase, watershed was our second phase, and then a third area down by the water was also identified. And so those have been now all constructed. The first phase was really about treating one downspout of water and bringing it into the right-of-way. It was unusual to be able to treat this water on such a steep roadway. And so using kind of these tiered weirs became a really great opportunity to test that water and see the benefits. As we went to the second phase, we had 2 downspouts of water that we were treating. We were treating the alley water, and we also had a living building challenge where we were collecting water off of the roof building, and any overflow from that that didn't fill the cistern would then also go and be treated in the swales. A lot of other ecosystem benefits were incorporated into this project, including pollinators for the 4 beehives that are on the roof. And just seeing these projects and right-of-ways as a public amenity really was very compelling to both the brokers and funders of these projects, as well as for tenants. This project was delivered right as the pandemic hit. And except for the retail, which of course was most impacted, all of the floors were leased during the pandemic and have remained leased. This is the third phase. This was kind of early after it was completed. And now we have this beautiful heavy timber bridge that's been installed this past year. And in total, the project cleans almost 2 million gallons of water every year. This project has also been really getting a lot of attention and has won a lot of awards. Most recently, it was recognized by ULI Americas and won the ULI Americas Award. We were one of 20 finalists that transferred to 10 projects selected across the country to be recognized. Our project then went on to compete against projects in Asia and Europe, and we were the single US project that was given a global ULI award. So we're still kind of floored at how far the story of these swales have reached, but it just shows that this is an issue that kind of touches at the heart of everyone. The CLT bridge that we installed on the third phase actually led into this last project that I'm going to talk about, North Lake Commons, which is a project with the Dunn Lumber family, kind of just down the road from the Aurora Bridge, where the same development group were really committed to water quality and identified kind of within the shoreline area of this project. We set the building back and were able to tap into a 4-foot diameter collector stormwater pipe coming down Latona. And this is the first example of Seattle Public Utilities entering into a private partnership with a private developer to bring that roadway runoff into a private site. They helped fund the project. The water comes into the site and goes through a swale and then connects right back to the same pipe. So same premise as the Aurora Bridge project. It's just about water quality. And the water that we ultimately are collecting is the area that you see here in red, which is roadway runoff and neighborhood water. And it both satisfies our on-site stormwater mitigation requirement, and it ultimately treated twice the required volume of water, and cleaned much dirtier water than what would have come off of the roof. So a real success story. That is my last slide. I'll turn it over to Kurt.
Okay, and whoop, can't screen share quite yet. There we go. Everyone see that? So, perfect. Welcome. I'd like to move now from some of the site-specific examples we've had the chance to understand and share initially to a broader system level planning and address some of the issues that we see in addressing quality salmon habitat, safe park systems for salmon habitat, both systematically and at scale. I would like for you to take away these points, if you would. First, I think it's important to really understand who owns ecosystem and open space planning in your community. We've had the pleasure to finish a master plan for Van Play, first park system master plan in Vancouver, British Columbia in about 42 years. And one of the things that we uncovered there is there were at least 10 municipal entities that dealt with questions of parks and recreation and open space and connectivity. And so to begin to think systematically, it's important to understand, if you will, the management structure, the governance infrastructure that directs these questions. Second is to begin with an understanding of historical ecology, and I'll talk about that. We're trying to reconcile natural habitats with the urban environment. And one of the things that we found important is to begin to think about the city and go back by gathering the oldest maps that we can find, oral histories, other forms of data, and trying to determine what the ecology of a particular region might have been before European settlement, and to use that as a guide to habitat restoration as a citywide or system scale. Fish, as you know, need water, and water does not particularly follow jurisdictional boundaries. It doesn't start flowing and stop flowing at the city. So thinking well beyond jurisdictional boundaries is important. As I mentioned, the historical ecology becomes a guide for restoring lost habitats of all types, both upland and riparian. And by the way, when I talk about ecosystems and open space planning, I'm talking about both terrestrial ecosystems and terrestrial open space, but also aquatic ecosystems and aquatic open space as well. As you saw in the last example, last two examples, really, the idea of daylighting hidden streams becomes essential to that, focusing on corridors and linkages of habitat, and then designing for performance metrics, particularly with water quality in mind. Okay. There we go. So in Vancouver, British Columbia has a park system of about 240 parks, about 1,320 acres of parkland. It is managed by a separate park board, which is independent of the city council, largely independent of the city council of Vancouver, which creates for dynamic management challenges, if you will. But we began, as I was going to say, from an ecological perspective. I don't know what cities are represented by our attendees today, but we find in many cities, and we've worked in all 50 states and in a number of foreign countries, that parks and recreation may be very traditionally oriented, focused on ball fields and playgrounds and things of that sort, or it may be very progressive in its thinking. Your park system may consider connectivity of trails and blueways and so forth. And it may consider the preservation and enhancement of open space in its mandate. And so depending upon the particular condition in your city, the management solution may be fairly straightforward, where the government entities are aligned, or it may become your job to try to bring these disparate points of view together comprehensively. So we began from that historical ecology perspective, as I mentioned, understanding the pre-Columbian condition, and set out to reconnect the entire perimeter of the Vancouver Peninsula as open space and as habitat restoration. So mapping shorelines, understanding the impact of sea level rise and water bodies on the ecology of the area, looking at watersheds, and I would say micro watersheds as a significant part of the planning process. So when we think about stormwater, as you've seen in some of the earlier examples, we understand how parks might contribute to the management of stormwater on a sub-watershed basis, so that there's a sense of a water budget that occurs not only on the overall watershed, but even within these subbasins. And then we mapped all of the hidden streams and called for the daylighting of all of those streams over time. We looked at wildlife corridors and natural areas. What are the existing habitat reserves that are still in place? Street trees, oftentimes managed by different departments other than your traditional park and recreation department, that can contribute to stormwater management, stormwater quality, and reduce the urban heat island. The water temperature certainly is a factor in understanding quality habitats, looking at parks, open space, and schoolyards, basically every opportunity for open space that we can find in a rapidly densifying city like Vancouver. And then how does that all begin to connect together as well? The other thing that we were pondering, and I think this particularly grew out of questions of sea level rise, is understanding that even on the peninsula of the city of Vancouver, there is a variety of habitat types, both aquatic and terrestrial, that are represented. And what is the size of those habitats that existing? What was the size of those habitats historically before pre-European settlement? And what within a park system is the proper composition of each of those habitat types? So as we think about not just restoration of salmon habitat or enhancement of salmon habitat, but of all species, what's the proper ecosystem management strategy around all of these landscapes that should be represented in the city? And so from that framework, you can see we've overlaid here the idea of restoring the historic hydrologic patterns of Vancouver, which are essential to habitat for humans, but also for all the other species. This particular plan was called Little Mountain, Big River. The idea of through restored habitat from the highest points of the city across existing parklands, through golf courses, through streets that would be converted to green streets, as you saw in some of the early examples, all the way to the Burrard Inlet. How do we restore habitat for all species and aquatic habitat throughout the core of the city? And so within that vision and building upon that historic ecology, we created this simulation, which illustrates the idea of Vancouver 100 years from now. And I say that because I believe Vancouver is 136 years old. What we have found in our work is that our current cities have reached their current condition, oftentimes not in harmony with the natural environment over a long period of time, 100 years, oftentimes or more. Oftentimes park system master plans are 5 years in length or 10 years in length or 20 years in length. And what we have found to be actually remarkably effective, but been quite surprised, is that by stretching people's thinking, stretching the time frame of understanding how long these sorts of major ecological restorations will occur, that all things become possible. It's no longer a question of, well, we can't do that, I'm up for re-election, that might be controversial. We can't do that, it won't fit into our 5-year budget cycle and so forth. We can't do that, I'm 5 years away from retirement, that will be a controversial idea. If you suddenly say, but what happens if we think 50 years or 100 years in the future, then suddenly people relax and they can talk about what the right thing to do might be, and all things become possible. So I talked about growing outside the boundaries. This is an inland location. They're not salmon, they're trout in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but certainly fisheries are an important part of the natural environment. And what we've learned in many of the places where we're working is that oftentimes we plan within the jurisdictional boundaries. We plan within the city limits, but you're fortunate in Oregon and Washington, you have very strong histories of growth management. And so you don't have quite the urban sprawl that we have in so many American cities, but oftentimes there's a tremendous amount of development in the suburban landscape just beyond the city boundaries. And so in Chattanooga, we actually looked at a 16 county, you can see the red boundary, which is the boundary of the city of Chattanooga. We looked at a 16 county boundary to understand how we might connect hydrologically, we might connect from an open space perspective, public lands, national forests, national parks, state parks, and so forth, all the way through the core of the city in a really comprehensive view, which I think is the kind of large scale regional thinking that's really needed to address these kind of salmon-safe environments. And so there again, we mapped hidden streams. You can see as we did in Vancouver, British Columbia, those hidden streams, interestingly enough, the city public works has become to realize daylighting these streams may be more cost effective than continuing with the belts and suspenders pipes system that they've historically deployed. And then that provided the framework of connecting parks. Many urban park systems are individual sites, and that sense of connectivity, both from a mobility point of view, but a habitat connectivity is often lost. We're working now in Vancouver, Washington, in a similar kind of way. You see here on the left, the mapping of the park systems there. There are snippets of connectivity around drainages and so forth, but for the most part, these parklands are individual sites without connectivity. So what we've strived to do is to start to think, as we did in British Columbia, you saw in Chattanooga, to think comprehensively about all of these ecological lands, particularly floodplains and wetlands and drainage corridors that are essential to fisheries habitat, and how those might link together with these green polygons of public parks into a comprehensive ecosystem strategy. And so all of that then, and all of these park systems establish standards for stormwater management, the standards for the volume of water that will be contained within captured stormwater within these parks, the quality of the water that will be maintained within them. And I will say, circling back to our example of Vancouver, British Columbia, that we, after our work on Vanplay, were called into a broader discussion about stormwater in Vancouver, British Columbia. And there's a tug of war between accommodating stormwater on private lands and a push to increasingly accommodate stormwater on public parks, if you will, to externalize the cost of accommodating stormwater on private lands by having the public accommodate those on parklands. And so there's an economic discussion and debate that you will need to engage in addressing stormwater management in this comprehensive way. So in summary, determine who owns the ecosystem and open space of planning. What's the governance framework, the management framework that you're working in? Begin with a historical ecology of your city or community. What was the ecology like pre-European settlement? What are we striving to try to achieve? Think boldly about that. Plan, as we showed in Chattanooga, well beyond jurisdictional boundaries. That provides a guide to restoring lost habitat and hidden streams. Always think about corridor and linkages, not simply individual parks, which may not provide the kind of connectivity that's needed for true quality habitat, and the design to performance metrics around water quality, water temperature, and so forth. So with that, I will now stop sharing and will pass to Heidi.
Hi, everyone. I think my colleague is going to help me share her screen with the presentation at some point.
Well,
It won't let me quite yet.
Can we
Hang
transfer it? Can we transfer it to Taylor, Kurt?
oh, sorry. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, you should be able to screen share now that Kurt stopped.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
You got it, Taylor?
Yep. Can everyone see my screen? Oh,
Not yet. There we go. Okay, well, thanks for having us. This will be a fairly concise presentation. We just wanted to provide information about King County Parks and Recreation, kind of why we did the Salmon-Safe work with Salmon-Safe to get the certification, along with just some understanding of the extent of our park system and how it and the different things that Salmon-Safe looked at for us. So very quickly, I wanted to provide some information on the broad range of our park system. I apologize, I have a dog barking in the background. I'm not sure if people can hear that. So hopefully that's filtered out. So King County Parks is a very large system. As you can see, there's a graphic at the top. We have 175 miles of regional trail corridors, over actually close, it could be even more than 205 parks at this point, as we continue to acquire a variety of different types of recreation land. 32,000 acres of open space and 250 miles of backcountry trails, hiking trails in the mountainous areas. We also have 150,000 acres of working forest and ecological conservation easements throughout the county. You can see the map to the right there. That's a map of all of our parks districts. That's what those are our operations and maintenance districts. We have 10 different districts, which houses, well, actually not just operations, but our entire parks employee count is here on the side. 294 career service employees, 43 temporary positions. We also have an aquatics facility. So it's a significant system. In the summers, we often get short-term, temporary, or seasonal workers who help operate and maintain our system, and that's what's highlighted there. So King County, as a park system, we play a unique role in parks, trails, and natural areas in the county by providing not just regional facilities, but we also serve both rural and unincorporated areas. Again, our system includes regional parks and recreation amenities such as natural areas, forests, regional and backcountry trails, and local parks in the unincorporated areas. We provide a whole slew of different recreational opportunities for residents, as well as protecting the region's public lands, hopefully leaving a legacy for our future generations. Over the past 20 years, King County has expanded shifted and refined its role as a parks provider. We are funded through, largely in part, through a voter-approved levy, which anchors sort of our near-term work program. The levies are 6 years. And we have a whole series of different countywide initiatives that also shape our parks programs. For example, King County has added thousands of acres of open space to the inventory in the last 30 years, which reflects many of our regional interests. And we also play a key role in implementing the Land Conservation Initiative, which is a King County initiative, and it's a long-term strategy for protecting the remaining high conservation value lands and securing our regional trail network within these next 25 years or so. We have also just more recently shifted our attention to urban unincorporated areas where equitable access to open space is a need. As far as we know, we are the largest park system in the nation to be certified salmon safe for our practices to protect salmon on our lands. It's really a manifestation of our Clean Water Healthy Habitat initiative, which is another initiative at King County investing $9 billion to protect our water quality and habitat through improvements to our wastewater and stormwater systems. Okay, switching to the next slide. I thought we could go through our Parks Division goals. As I mentioned earlier, we're funded by a 6-year property tax levy. We're in our 4th levy, and it provides funding for operations, maintenance, and capital improvements. Our Parks levy goals were determined several levy cycles ago in the 2013 timeframe, and they are still quite relevant today. One of the main ones is let's take care of the existing system of parks and trails that we currently have, and let's ensure that all of our parks and trails remain clean, safe, and open. We are really interested in continuing to increase access to our parks and recreation places and for all of our King County residents. We're investing heavily in our regional trail systems to increase mobility and also complete fairly essential connections through our existing trail system. So we continue to improve access in that way. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier with the Land Conservation Initiative, we are growing and connecting our regional space by acquiring more natural lands that protect our habitat for fish and wildlife and also provide recreation opportunities. Our parks are located within the 5 different watersheds within King County, which you can see here. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with them. In King County, we have mountain ranges, forests, farmlands, waterways, and shorelines that define the character of our landscape. The natural lands provide a wide range of outdoor recreational opportunities, create critical habitat for fish and wildlife, help us maintain air and water quality, and support natural resource economies such as forestry and agriculture, along with providing many, many other benefits. In 2021, our team pursued a Salmon-Safe certification with specific benefits in mind that are basically listed here. We thought it would be beneficial to get a third party to look at how we operate and build in our parks. And this was an opportunity. Salmon-Safe really provided that opportunity for third party verification and validation of our sustainability practices. We also looked at this as an opportunity to strengthen our stewardship and operation practices and also provide improved consistency across those 10 different operations districts that we had. Finally, I think many of you guys know, if you're from the region, King County has a green building ordinance, which is really intended to ensure that planning, design, and construction of King County properties owned or financed capital projects is consistent with sustainable development practices. And this helps us also with those certification requirements when we build anything in our parks. So that's an added benefit for us as well. The certification luckily applies to our entire park system. So that also helped us with cost savings and efficiencies as we go through the permitting process and any construction projects for us. In general, we believe that Salmon-Safe is really helping us to prevent more harm. It's restoring things that have been lost in our ecological system. And so we are looking forward to this really improving our ecological function and the quality of habitat for fish, wildlife, and people throughout all of King County. Anna described the assessment process, and I won't go into too many details about this, but we found the approach very useful to better understand and assess our operations and maintenance processes. In particular, we have several different plans that they reviewed. They evaluated our capital design guidelines and as well as our infrastructure and expansion plans. Interviews included 16 key staff of not only our division, but divisions that we partner with within the bigger part of King County. And then there were, of course, site assessments at 21 locations, which included regional trails, some of our multi-use parks. And by that, we mean parks that had all different activities, walking paths, active fields, and a different variety of activities, natural areas and restoration areas, and then operations shops as well. I think Anna also went over this, so I won't go long on this. Here are the different practices or standards that Salmon-Safe had and for us, and they looked at these for us. So in general, we found some of our successes just based on the information they helped us with. We had a high level of on-the-ground stewardship in many of the standard-safe areas. We do also have a consistent focus on using GSI for stormwater management on many of our parks projects, and we will continue to do so as we move forward. And then finally, our investment in improving the ecological function of former residential and agriculture properties was evident. So the items highlighted in green are the main areas where we needed to sort of work on. And we'll go through that really quickly. I think, are we at the end of time, Anna, or do we have a few more minutes?
No, we actually have until 1:30, so we'll have Q&A.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'm close to being done. So we had 3 different preconditions that were required of us, 7 different conditions, and 3 continuous improvement recommendations that the Salmon-Safe team provided to us. I won't go long on the 3 conditions, but I did want to share the 7 different conditions that we had. So these were the different, I guess, conditional certification certification conditions that we had. And we have been working hard on all of these different conditions. We've accomplished many of them so far. I don't want to go long on this, just given the amount of time we have, but we still have 3 more to work on in our 5-year period. With that, I just wanted to close up by saying we really appreciate how much this has helped us document and define and improve specific procedures within our operations practices. And we hope to continue to move these efforts forward so that we can continue to be a leader in protecting our habitat and leading to improved health for people and wildlife. And Anna, I think I'm supposed to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, and actually, Ella, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I was just gonna open it up to Q&A if anybody has any questions. If they want to jump in. Anna, can they just talk or do they have to put it in the chat?
You can put it in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen.
Perfect.
And we're also joined by Erin Weckworth, I think we mentioned at the beginning, from Salmon-Safe BC. So she'll be joining in to answer any specific BC-related questions alongside, Kurt, who presented about Vancouver, BC. And Erin, just wanted to open it up if you wanted to say anything. You have some space to do so, but no pressure.
Oh, thanks so much, Anna. I just wanted to say how much I really appreciated all the speakers today. That was so informative. We're really excited here in BC about the Parks and Natural Areas certification. We just recently announced it up here in September, I believe, in our September newsletter. So it's new to us here in BC, and we're really looking forward to speaking with anybody who's interested about this new certification. Thank you.
Any other questions from the attendees?
While people are gathering their thoughts, there's one question that I just answered via text within the Q&A, and that was just around the quantification methods used for water runoff management. And that can vary depending on the scale of, whether we're looking at an individual park, whether it's a new development or existing, versus whether we're looking at a whole park system. But when there is the opportunity to be involved in, say, the design phase of a new park or redevelopment of a park, we'll often work directly with the design team, specifically the civil engineer, and rely on their stormwater modeling calculations to compare both the immediate pre-development to the proposed design condition. And Salmon-Safe looks to a true pre-development, like pre-Lewis and Clark days, pre-European settlement condition of a site when it comes to the hydrology. So we can also take a look at what that might have looked like in terms of runoff calculations. And then when it comes to a whole park system scale, again, we're kind of relying on modeling to understand the impact and understand that perhaps no one park site may hit all the check boxes with respect to Salmon-Safe standards, but that as a whole, that park system is working towards, compliance with all of the standards and improvement over time.
I'll just throw it out there too. If there are any questions that come up after the fact, feel free to email myself or Anna. We're here. We can definitely pass it off to any of the panelists to make sure that they can answer that for you. And I do, again, just want to thank all the speakers for giving us your time and sharing all the information that you have. It was really great. And we are always excited to put on panels like this, especially with, such a great group of speakers. So thank you again for your time. And if there is no further questions, we can, is there one?
It looks like there's one that just came in, which I could take a first pass at answering and then would open it up to our park systems representatives to answer too. So the question just in terms of requirements, thoughts on treating Japanese knotweed in parks. We use IPM, but for knotweed, it's essential to use herbicide. So I think I had referenced that Salmon-Safe maintains a high hazard list. So those are active ingredients known to be hazardous to salmonids and other aquatic life. So we look for chemistries that contain those active ingredients to be strictly avoided as Salmon-Safe parks or park systems. However, we recognize that in balancing the goals of invasive management and habitat restoration, there can be a time and a place for strategic limited use of those high hazard list chemistries. And we offer a variance process. So we review the specific uses, the IPM approach, the other strategies that have been used or will be used prior to application of that chemistry, and do recognize that there is the time and a place to use certain pesticides, including for Japanese knotweed. And I just offer that if Portland Parks or King County Parks or anyone else has specific experience with Japanese knotweed that you care to share, feel free.
I wish our experts were here in it because they probably do have some experience, but unfortunately I'm not the best person to answer it.
Yeah, I'm in the same position. I don't have specific knowledge of Japanese knotweed, but I would say that we have an IPM program and an IPM coordinator, and she works really closely with the Salmon-Safe folks when we do have a need if we need to add new chemicals to our approved chemical list, or, on developing when and where those can be used. So I think Anna said strategic use when really needed, and I think that is our approach, and has helped us be successful in limiting the use of chemicals as much as we can.
Well, I think a lot of folks maybe had to drop off at 1. I know the lunch hour is kind of a coveted time slot.
There is a Tanner Park question.
I see that. So the person asked what size the Tanner Springs park is, and it's just about an acre. So it's a small city block.
All right, well, if there is any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we can hang out for a few more minutes.
Yeah, and I would just say, for those of you who haven't had a chance to visit Tanner Springs, it was the inspiration you might have noticed for our postcard, our graphic, promoting this event. And it's a truly, and as you saw in Laura's photos and her presentation, it's a really beautiful park and part of a trio of parks in the Pearl District of Portland. So worth a visit if you are in town or inspired to do a tour of parks.
And I did drop all the links in the chat.
Yeah, and for those of you who have been with from the very beginning, you probably noticed that we are recording this session. So we will make the recording available and share that out to everyone. I see that we're down to fewer attendees than panelists at this point, so maybe we'll go ahead and call it. But thank you again to all of our panelists. Thank you to Ella and Ellen and Aaron as well. And Jane, thanks for your note and the Q&A too. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.